3 weeks ago, a whole squad of polo shirt crusaders lined up at my front fence, chanting for me to open the gate for the HOA. I unfolded a lawn chair, popped a cold beer, and sat down where they could all see me. Then I held up a little scorecard I'd made from a scrap of cardboard. 7.5. For lousy coordination. They thought I was just some stubborn ranch hermit playing games with his driveway. They had no idea there were 4K cameras on every corner, a stack of receipts in my desk, and one very nervous treasurer ready to turn their whole HOA inside out. I said 3 words. My land. My rules. To understand how we got to that circus, you've got to understand 2 things. The ground under my boots and the man who first broke it. Folks around here say Texas dirt remembers. Boots, storms, hooves, and bad decisions. Stay on it long enough, it remembers you, too. I've spent most of my life on this 12-acre piece just east of town. Not all at once. Life hauled me away a few times the way it hauls everyone. But every road I wore out eventually curved right back here. Like the land had been sitting patient, arms crossed, waiting for me to come to my senses. The house isn't much to look at. Low, wide, older than most marriages in the county, leaning a little west like it's tired but not going anywhere. My grandfather Earl built the first version himself. He believed a man wasn't worth much if he didn't leave something behind that could stand up to a good wind. Out here, the wind doesn't knock. It just walks in. Boy, he used to say, you don't own land. You look after it so it'll look after you. I believed him then. I believe him more now. This place has carried me. Fence line, gravel drive, the old shop that smells like diesel and cedar. All of it. The driveway runs a quarter-mile from the county road. Same path my grandfather cut in 1967 with a rented grader and a mule that hated mornings. It winds through a stand of pecans and ends at a heavy iron gate with my last name welded across the middle. The kind of gate that says, without raising its voice, turn around if you weren't invited. Most locals respect that. The older ones prefer it. Quiet and privacy are rare these days. Out here, they're permanent residents. Mornings moved slow. Coffee on the porch. Dogs at my feet. The sun coming up soft and orange behind the cedars. I'd watch the dust hang over the empty road, knowing nobody came up that drive by accident. Peace like that isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in breaths. My workshop sat off to the side, long and low, added onto whenever my grandfather got bored or mad. Inside lives a museum of stubborn machinery. Tools older than their owners. A tractor held together mostly by cussing and heritage, and a whole collection of half-finished projects waiting for me to decide which ones mattered. Life wasn't fancy. Didn't need to be. I had space. I had quiet. I had enough distance between me and the next human that I could drink coffee in my underwear and no one would call the sheriff. They don't sell that kind of freedom in cul-de-sacs. For a long time, nobody bothered me. The mail came when it felt like it. The dogs barked when they had something to say. Seasons rolled along steady. Only rules that mattered lived in the dirt and in my grandfather's memory. Then Clearwater Ridge arrived. First it was survey flags, orange and pink teeth biting into the scrub across the road. Then came trucks, concrete, framing crews. Within a year, a full HOA community sprang up like a prefab infection. They called it Clearwater Ridge, which was cute, seeing as there isn't anything clear about this place. Just brush, dust, and a creek that only remembers it's a creek when the rain forgets to stop. They threw those houses up fast. Too fast. Rows of boxes tucked behind a white stucco wall and a big swoopy script sign out front. A gated utopia for folks who want their lives pre-approved and factory sealed. Out here, we call that decoration for people who don't trust themselves. Running that little kingdom was their president, Karen Sterling. You've seen her kind. Sharp haircut, sharper tone. Clothes pressed flatter than her sense of humor. The sort of person who can say community and make it sound like a threat. At public meetings, she probably called herself a steward of neighborhood order. To me, she looked like someone who thought rules were sacred as long as she wrote every line. At first, we ignored each other. They stayed on their side. I stayed on mine. They could argue about lawn height and mailbox color until Judgment Day. Their world was newsletters and next-door drama. Mine was busted knuckles and a gate that only moved for the right people. But geography didn't care. The back of their development butted up against rough country. Brush, rock, uneven ground. No good path for big trucks, fire engines, or any of the shiny toys HOAs like to show off. The only practical access was my southern gate. The one that opens onto my private gravel road. The road my grandfather carved with sweat, diesel, and language that'd get you thrown out of church. They looked at that road and saw convenience. I looked at it and saw spine. They wanted it. I said no. With people like that, no isn't an answer. It's a dare. 3 days after Clearwater Ridge held their ribbon cutting, I saw movement at my southern gate. 2 guys in reflective vests, one in a crisp navy polo. Even from halfway down the drive I could spot their leader. Clipboard, polished shoes, chin high, smile that split the difference between salesman and threat. The type whose heaviest lift in life was his own ego. I walked down slow, wiping grease off my hands. The dogs trailed behind like deputies. Clipboard stepped up, smile bright enough to need a warning label. "Good morning, sir. We're with Clearwater Ridge Community Logistics. We'd like to request temporary access through your gate for a few days. Construction trucks, equipment deliveries. Would really save us some trouble." Said it like he was doing me a kindness. I looked at the gate behind them, then at him. "This gate?" "Yes, sir," he said, nodding like the paperwork was already signed. One of the vest guys added, "Concrete trucks roll in Friday. Your road's the only direct shot." I folded the rag. Not because it was dirty, because silence makes people show their real faces. "This road isn't public," I said. "It's on my deed and it's not on your plans. You know that." Clipboard's smile cracked just a hair. "We can make it worth your while. The HOA is prepared to compensate you generously." I shook my head, slow and final. "I already told your president I'm not interested. This isn't a logistics problem. It's a boundary problem." He drew in a breath, probably to launch some speech about community cooperation, but I cut him off. Not angry, just done. My land, my rules. The air shifted. Not wind, just that heavy stillness when someone realizes the answer won't change. Their friendly masks slid off. Clipboard flipped to a new page. "You might regret that," he muttered. My smile wasn't friendly. "You're standing on private property without permission," I said. "That's trespassing." Conversation's over. I pulled out my phone and dialed the sheriff's non-emergency line. Their posture snapped tight. They left before Deputy Miller got there, tires grinding my gravel like a warning. Miller took my report with the weary sigh of a man who knows trouble doesn't knock once and leave. "Overexcited suburban folks," he said, but his eyes told the rest. This wouldn't be his last trip up my driveway. He was right. Next morning, HOA pamphlets were jammed into my gate hinges, stuffed in my mailbox, scattered across the gravel like glossy confetti. Bold red letters shouted, "Blocking community infrastructure. Endangering public safety. He's putting us all at risk." They'd even spun up a website. I didn't yell, didn't stomp, didn't throw a thing. I added another lock to the gate, welded on a second bracket, and mounted a new camera on the east fence. If they wanted a fight, they just picked the wrong man on the wrong land on the wrong damn day. The silence after that first showdown wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that waits in the treeline, seeing what you'll do next. I already knew what they would do. People who don't hear no translate it as try harder. So I got ready. I spent 2 days upgrading every camera on the property. Thermal sensors, night vision, motion triggers, closed loop recording with cloud backups every 30 minutes. Not paranoia, experience. Trouble rarely knocks twice politely. Right on schedule, trouble came calling. At 2:31 a.m., my phone buzzed once on the nightstand. Motion alert. East fence. I rolled out of bed, pulled on boots and a jacket, and stepped into the cold night air. No panic. Just a steady walk toward the workshop while I checked the feed. 2 figures in black hugging my fence line like they were auditioning for a community theater heist. One carried a low flashlight. The other hauled a tool bag big enough to prove this wasn't curiosity. They reached the gate. Tool bag pulled out a handheld grinder, thumbed it on, and set it against my lock. Sparks sprayed like angry fireflies. He wasn't getting through, triple reinforced steel wrapped in armor plate, but the attempt told me everything I needed to know about intent. His buddy handed him a folded paper. Under the flashlight I caught the header. Looked like a court order if you squinted and stopped knowing what real ones look like. Badge on his vest said Riverbend Enforcement Officer. That position exists only in the imagination of HOA presidents who think they run their own country. I didn't yell, didn't charge out. Sometimes the smartest play is letting people document their own crimes in high definition. From behind the tractor shed I filmed everything. Grinder, bogus paperwork, cosplay badge. Every bad decision made in the name of compliance. Headlights topped the far ridge. Then red and blue washed over the gate. Deputy Miller and another unit rolled in hot, tires spitting dust. As soon as they saw sparks, they hit the loudspeaker. Hands up. Step away from the property. Grinder boy dropped the tool like it bit him. His partner bolted, got maybe 15 feet, then plowed face first into the mud with a sound that did wonders for my mood. By the time I walked into the light, both were cuffed on the ground. "Mr. Saltz," Miller said. "This happen often?" Before I could answer, Grinder boy panicked. Wait. This is a misunderstanding. Karen said it was authorized. She said we had immunity. She promised she'd handle the paperwork." His partner groaned. "Dude, stop talking." Miller didn't react, just tapped the mic on his vest. Slow, deliberate. Translation: "Keep talking. It's all on record." "I only have problems," I told Miller. "When the HOA gets creative." He didn't quite smile, but the corner of his mouth twitched. He knew this wasn't some one-off stunt. This was the opening salvo of a war. Miller got busy. Second unit secured the scene. The fake court order went into an evidence bag. Even from a few feet away you could see it was junk. Wrong font, smeared notary, a signature that looked like it was forged in the back of a moving truck. The younger deputy held it up. "You seeing this?" Miller gave that slow nod men give when they finally locate the rot. He turned back to the two on the ground. "Help me understand. Why the grinder? Why the forged paperwork? Why 2:30 in the morning?" They kept quiet for a beat. Then Grinder boy cracked again. "I told you Karen said it was authorized. She said she'd cover immunity, paperwork, everything. Called it, expedited compliance operations." Miller blinked once. "That's not a thing," he said. "HOAs don't have enforcement officers. They don't issue court orders. And they sure as hell don't authorize break-ins at 2:30 a.m. The other deputy was already radioing in details. Miller motioned me over. "You got this on camera?" "Every angle," I said. "Night vision, audio, nice close-up of the costume badges." He let out a long breath. "Good. This isn't just trespassing anymore. We've got fake documents, impersonating officials, attempted forced entry. These boys are in deep. If what they said about this Karen woman holds, she's deeper. I'd already guessed as much." He told me to get copies of the footage to the station in the morning and keep the gate locked down tight. "Already planned on it," I said. They drove off, lights shrinking into the dark. I stood by the gate a while, letting night settle back in. Burnt metal hung in the air. A man can feel it in his bones when a line's been crossed. That night, someone didn't just cross mine. They stomped on it with both feet. By sunrise I'd compiled every second of video and audio and dropped it at the sheriff's office. Evidence like that doesn't belong in your pocket. It belongs where it can do some damage. By noon, the investigation was official. By 4 p.m., the HOA posted a shiny PDF to their site, blasted it to residents, taped it to the Clearwater Ridge entry gate. The Riverbend Homeowners Association distances itself from the unlawful actions of an independent contractor. We are shocked and disappointed by this individual's behavior and remain committed to community safety. Translation: we didn't think he'd get caught. They weren't done. That evening I found fresh pamphlets scattered along my fence. Different tone this time. Not about infrastructure. About me. Accusations. speculation, warnings about the hostile landowner across the road. One even had a grainy zoomed-in shot of my gate with fake crime scene tape photoshopped across it. Teenagers do better edits making memes. I almost laughed. Almost. But something inside settled instead. Quiet, flat, steady. They thought scare tactics would work where bribery didn't. All they'd really done was show me how far they were willing to go. That meant the next move was mine. Charm had failed. Threats had failed. Forged orders and a midnight break-in had backfired. So the next step in their minds was theater. 2 mornings after their shocked and disappointed statement, I walked onto my porch with fresh coffee and saw something this road hadn't seen in 20 years. A crowd. Maybe a dozen people hovered near my fence like confused flamingos. They stayed just on the safe side of the property line, close enough to be seen, far enough not to cross it. Homemade signs waved. Let US through emergency access saves lives, share the road. Salt's one woman held a neon poster. Don't be selfish. Think of the community. She'd glued glitter to it. At 7 in the morning. I didn't march out there or yell. I went and got a lawn chair, some beef jerky, and a cooler with 2 beers. Set up under the pecan tree like it was the 4th of July. Then I stepped back inside and came out with a little dry erase board and a fat red marker. I held it up. 7.5. They went quiet. An older man near the front shouted, "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "You're offbeat," I called back. "If you're going to protest, at least get in sync. Arms, knees, rhythm." A few huffed. One woman actually gasped. I took a bite of jerky and added, "Come on now. Show me some effort." Half of them looked offended or embarrassed. The other half looked like they weren't sure why they were even there. Crowds like that, the loud ones don't worry me. It's the quiet one you watch, the one scanning for witnesses. Sure enough, mid-morning, a man showed up who didn't match the retirees. Late 40s. Ball cap pulled low. Polo 2 sizes too tight. Shoulders stiff. He walked straight to my gate and started snapping pictures. Gate. House. Me. I stood up slow, hands visible. The GoPro on my hat was already blinking red. "Can I help you?" I asked. He ignored me. Took another photo, zoomed in. "Sir," I said, voice firmer. "You're on the easement line. Step back." He stepped closer instead. "You the land hog?" he shouted. "The guy blocking ambulances? The one putting families at risk?" "This is private property," I said, calm. "Step away from the gate." He moved in again. Reached out. More of a theatrical brush than a swing. Fingertips barely grazing my jacket. Then he threw himself backward like he'd been shot. Hit the dirt and started screaming. "He hit me. He assaulted me. Call the cops." Phones flew up. Voices jumped in. "Oh my God. Did you see that? That's assault." I saw it, even though half of them had been staring at their screens 2 seconds earlier. I didn't move, didn't go near him. I just tapped the side of my cap, where the little red light blinked steady. Evidence doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. By the time the sheriff's unit rolled up, Deputy Miller again. The actor was still on the ground, groaning, holding a tissue under his nose with no blood anywhere. Miller stepped out with the patience of a man who's seen every cheap trick twice. "All right," he said. "What happened?" The actor sprang up like someone hit his power button. "He assaulted me," he yelled, pointing at me like he'd found the killer in a TV courtroom. "Just came up and shoved me. I want to press charges." "You want to press charges?" Miller repeated, slow. "Absolutely," the man snapped. Miller turned to me. "You got footage?" I unclipped the GoPro and handed it over. "Gate cameras got a clean angle too," I added. A couple of folks drifted backward. Phones lowered. Expressions shifted. Miller went back to his cruiser, plugged the GoPro into his tablet and watched. The crowd went silent. I watched him. Eyebrows stayed level. No sigh. No smirk. He just replayed the moment in slow motion. That was that. He stepped out holding the tablet at his side. "Sir," he said to the actor, "you want to change your statement?" The man hesitated, eyes flicking over the crowd. Pride is a bad navigator. He lifted his chin. Well, maybe it wasn't that. Turn around, Miller said, already reaching for his cuffs. What? What do you think you're doing? He assaulted. No, sir. Miller cut in, voice flat. You filed a false report and attempted to defraud law enforcement. That's a crime. Cuffs clicked. The crowd that had been chanting was now folding signs and heading back to their SUVs like kids sneaking home after curfew. I didn't know they were going to do that, one woman muttered, whatever she needed to tell herself. As they loaded the actor into the cruiser, someone in the retreating crowd yelled, We didn't sign up for this. But they had. They just hadn't expected the script to fall apart on camera. Miller gave me a look, part apology, part warning. This is getting out of hand. Be careful. Careful's my specialty, I said. He didn't argue. He drove off. The fence line went quiet again. Too quiet. Because if they were desperate enough to stage an assault, they were nowhere near finished. Trouble has a sound. Not yelling, not gunfire. A slow, heavy crunch of rubber on gravel, backed by a deep diesel rumble that your gut recognizes before your ears do. I heard it the next morning. I was elbow-deep in the guts of an old Massey Ferguson when the noise rolled across my land. Not a pickup. Not a delivery truck. Something with weight. I stepped out, wiping my hands, and saw it. A bright yellow excavator crawling along the far side of my fence. 3 men in vests walked beside it. One with a clipboard, one with survey flags, one with fluorescent spray paint. These weren't lost men. They walked like somebody had sworn up and down they were allowed to be there. I headed for the fence. Not fast, not slow. Just the walk of the man who owns the ground. Clipboard spotted me and pasted on a friendly expression. Morning, sir, he called. We're just prepping for a temporary access lane. Only surface grading. Nothing structural. On whose authority? I asked. He consulted his clipboard like the answer might crawl out of the paper. Per community project management directives. Temporary equipment route. That's funny, I said, stopping at the fence. This land belongs to me, and nobody handed me a damn thing to sign. He shifted. Eyes flicked to his crew. Sir, we were told this was pre-approved. By who? He swallowed. Karen. I tilted my head. Never heard of her. While he was processing that, the guy with the spray paint bent down and tagged a bright orange X right on my fence post. On it. Not near it. My post, I said, quiet. He froze mid-spray like he'd just bet his paycheck on the wrong horse. In the cab, the excavator operator leaned out. You want us to cut the first pass? He called. No, I said louder. Nobody touches that fence. Clipboard tried for a smile, but it came out queasy. Sir, please. We were assured. I pulled out my phone. Let me help you with your assurance. I called the sheriff. Then the county zoning office. While we waited, I filmed everything. Flags, paint, documents, machine idling like a loaded threat. The crew did useless busywork. Measuring nothing, pacing, staring at their boots like they might disappear. 45 minutes later, the county inspector showed up. Gray hair, glasses, boots older than Clearwater Ridge itself. He walked the area with me, looked at the flags, the paint marks, the fence, the machine. You boys got a permit? He asked the workers. Silence. Survey markers? He tried again. More silence. Anything at all that says you're allowed here? Clipboard's voice cracked. We were told. That's not what I asked, the inspector snapped. A different deputy arrived this time. He glanced along the fence. Looks like you caught them before they did any damage, sir. Damage isn't the point, I said. Intent is. He didn't argue. The workers packed up fast. Flags yanked, paint capped, excavator backing away like a scolded dog. The land was fine. Their strategy wasn't. This wasn't confusion or a mix-up. It was a coordinated attempt to push through my line with equipment, hired crews, and a lie. They weren't trying to talk anymore. They were trying to take. By evening, the air felt like the hour before a thunderstorm. Not in the sky, in people. The excavator stunt had rattled somebody over in Clearwater Ridge. The workers fled like they'd seen a ghost. The inspector left shaking his head. The deputy left annoyed and suspicious. And somewhere in that clubhouse, someone finally realized Karen had stepped across a line they couldn't afford to follow. I just didn't know who yet. Around 9 p.m., I was closing the workshop when I heard footsteps near the gate. Not the arrogant stomp of an HOA officer or the sneaky shuffle of a trespasser. Hesitant, uneven, like a man walking toward his own verdict. The dogs didn't bark. They just watched. I stepped outside with a flashlight and swept the beam toward the road. A man stood there in pressed khakis and a button-down, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Familiar in that vague, seen him at the grocery store way. He lifted a hand. "Mr. Saltz, may I talk to you a moment?" His voice shook, not from cold. I opened the gate halfway and stayed 3 feet back. "Depends. Who are you?" He swallowed. Tyler Manning. "I'm the treasurer for Clearwater Ridge." Something clicked. This wasn't a messenger. This was a man carrying weight. "I didn't come as a board member," he said quickly. "I came as a homeowner. I'm not here to argue about the road or access or any of that. I can't be part of what's happening anymore." He wiped his hands on his pants. I didn't reassure him, didn't hurry him, just waited. Men tell you the truth when the silence gets heavy enough. "You're not the villain they say you are," he blurted. "And what happened today, that excavator, that wasn't an accident. Karen authorized it. She told the board it was pre-negotiated and pending county approval." He shook his head hard. "I checked. None of it was true." I nodded once. "Keep going." Tyler opened his bag and pulled out a thick envelope. He held it out like it burned. Inside, a USB drive and a stack of printed emails. "I shouldn't have this," he whispered. "If she finds out I copied it, she'll destroy me." He swallowed. She already tried. Now he had my full attention. "As treasurer, I keep the books. Normal stuff. Dues, maintenance, contractor payments." He dragged a hand through his hair. "But the last 6 months, things stopped adding up. Large payments, off-book transfers, accounts labeled security operations and resolution strategy. 40,000 here, 60 there. Some through shell companies, some cash." I raised an eyebrow. "And who signed off?" His voice broke. "Karen. Only Karen." He looked up, eyes tired and scared. "Mr. Saltz, there's over $300,000 missing." The number didn't surprise me. The way he said it did. She told the board it was for community protection, legal prep, conflict mitigation. But the vendors aren't real. The invoices are fake. When I dug, I found transfers with my initials on them that I never approved. She forged them. "And you're here," I said. "Because," he met my eyes for the first time, "because she's going to blame me." There it was. Not heroism. Survival. "I found an email," he said, pulling a folded printout from his pocket. Red highlight glared across the line. "Draft statement. Says I acted alone and mismanaged funds and authorized contractors without board consent." His throat worked. "When that break-in happened, the fake court order, the badges, the grinder, that wasn't some rogue contractor. It was paid out of an account she opened herself." I matched the ledger. He looked away. "Tonight she called an emergency closed session. I wasn't invited. One of the other board members leaked a message. He handed me the printout. We can outlast him legally. Even if we're in the wrong, the pressure will make him cave. And if anything goes sideways, the treasurer will take the fall." "I won't go to prison for something I didn't do," Tyler whispered. "And I can't let her drag the whole community into this." He nodded to the envelope. "It's all there. Emails, meeting transcripts, transaction logs, forged approvals, plans for the break-in, the excavator, and more." I took the envelope but didn't open it yet. "I shouldn't be here," he said again. "If Karen finds out I talked to you." "She won't," I said. He nodded, though it didn't comfort him much. As he turned to leave, he paused. "You're not the only one she's hurt," he said quietly. "You're just the only one who isn't scared of her." I watched him walk back toward Clearwater Ridge. A man who'd finally picked a side and hated that it had come to that. The night took him. I stood alone with the envelope in my hand, knowing one thing for certain. Karen Sterling hadn't just picked a fight. She'd picked the wrong enemy. In a small town, word doesn't spread fast or slow. It just seeps, like dust on wind or water in a dry creek bed, finding every low spot. By the next morning, half the county had heard some version of what happened near my fence. Depending on the storyteller, it involved an excavator, a fake court order, or that mess with the HOA. Curiosity built. So did confusion. And I had no intention of letting Karen write the only story. I fired off a dozen short emails. 3 to local reporters I trusted. A few to neighbors. A few to folks in town who'd asked questions. I kept it simple. I'll be hosting a community transparency open house at my property this Saturday. All are welcome. Documentation provided. Bring whoever you like. No shouting. No drama. Just sunlight. And sunlight is the one thing people like Karen can't survive. Saturday came in hot and gusty. I pitched 2 pop-up tents at the mouth of my driveway. Under one, a long table covered with neatly organized paperwork. Under the other, 2 kids I'd been mentoring in the shop, offering free mower and garden tool sharpening to anyone who wanted it. We stacked a cooler with cold water. Free service draws more people than outrage ever will. By 10 a.m., folks started arriving. A retired couple from the next county. A dad with 2 young kids who only cared about seeing the tractor. A man from 3 houses into Clearwater Ridge who admitted he didn't trust the HOA newsletters anymore. The reporters arrived next. Not big city parachuters, but local people who knew every back road, every property line, and half the family trees. They asked clear questions. I gave clear answers. I walked them along the fence, showed where the excavator sat, pointed out the orange paint mark on my post, told them how my grandfather graded the road himself in '67, how the deed on that easement had my family's name on it long before Clearwater Ridge had a name at all. In the tent, I laid out maps, old plat charts, title transfers, tax receipts going back 50+ years. Paper you can feel with your hands. Ink and stamps, not editable PDFs. Beside that sat laminated copies of the Clearwater Ridge buyer agreement. One line highlighted in bright orange. Southern ingress and egress not guaranteed or implied. People read it and shook their heads. They bought houses without reading this? One man muttered. Sounds like someone lied to them, said another. I didn't add a word. The page said enough. Tyler came, too. No HOA badge. No khakis. Just jeans and a t-shirt. He stayed at the edge of the tent, away from cameras, glancing over his shoulder now and then as if expecting Karen to appear with a clipboard and a grudge. He didn't speak much, but the look in his eyes said he was done being scared of that clubhouse. Around noon, more Clearwater Ridge residents trickled in, 2s and 3s. Curiosity, guilt, conscience. Take your pick. One woman edged up to me, purse hugged to her ribs. I'm sorry, she said. We didn't know. We thought you were just being unreasonable. I'm not here to rub noses in it, I said. I just want the truth out. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Well, today helped. By late afternoon, my driveway felt almost like a picnic. Kids ran around. Thermoses clanked. My apprentices sharpened blades fast enough to earn tips. The reporters kept scribbling while the sun lit the documents like exhibits. What mattered most wasn't who came. It was who didn't. The HOA's Access Now Facebook group went quiet. No counter-protest. No staged scenes. No Karen. She was either regrouping or panicking. Either way worked for me. As the last trucks pulled away and the sky went orange behind the cedars, I folded the tents and stacked the documents. For the first time since all this began, the wind didn't feel like a warning. Felt like a turn. This wasn't about a gate anymore. It was about truth getting loud enough to drown out her lies. The next move wouldn't be mine. It would be Karen's. And it would be her worst. The Travis County Courthouse smells like old paper, floor wax, recycled air, and tension you can taste. I showed up early. Pressed shirt. Clean boots. the kind of outfit my grandfather reserved for days that mattered. Inside, the HOA's legal team sat in a tight cluster like one nervous animal, matching suits, matching binders, matching fear. Karen parked herself in the center, jaw clenched hard enough to crack enamel. She refused to look my way. Behind them sat Tyler, different now, not hiding, not timid, just done. The judge came in, sharp eyes, silver hair, zero patience. Riverbend HOA versus Mr. Saltz, she announced. Petition for temporary access easement. Counsel, proceed. The HOA went first. Their lawyer stood with a rehearsed smile. He rolled out aerial photographs, emergency response hypotheticals, diagrams full of arrows and color-coded nonsense. He claimed my locked gate threatened regional resilience, whatever focus group phrase that was. They brought in an expert who spoke fluent corporate soup. All buzzwords, no meat. Then they submitted staged photos. An ambulance conveniently parked at my closed gate, lights on, as if it had once actually happened. It hadn't. Karen nodded through it all like a bobblehead on a dashboard. When they finally sat down, Miss Davis stood. She moved with the quiet certainty of someone who already knows the ending. First came my deed. Then the 1967 plat map. Then 55 years of tax receipts on that private road. Next, she put up photos of the excavator where it had no business being. Painted X on my fence post. Flags. Workers. Machine. The judge leaned forward. And when trespass failed, Miss Davis said, they escalated. She tapped her laptop. The lights dimmed. The break-in footage filled the big screen. Grinder screaming against solid steel. Sparks flying. The fake Riverbend enforcement badge. The forged court order with mismatched fonts and an invalid notary seal. The HOA table seemed to shrink. And when criminal entry didn't get them what they wanted, click, up came the helmet cam. Ball-cap man with the too-tight polo. His weak swipe. His theatrical dive into the dirt. His screaming. Someone in the gallery snorted. Good Lord, another whispered. The judge's face didn't move at all, which somehow made it worse. Miss Davis laid another document on the projector. Here is the $500 payment receipt for that man's appearance fee, authorized by President Sterling. Karen went the color of cheap paper. And now, Miss Davis said, the heart of this dispute. She displayed the Clearwater Ridge purchase agreement, page open to the highlighted clause. The judge read it. Her eyes stopped there. Ms. Sterling, she said, were homeowners made aware of this southern ingress and egress not guaranteed or implied clause? Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Your Honor, Miss Davis said crisply. The HOA treasurer would like to testify. Tyler walked to the stand, raised his right hand, swore in. He glanced at me once, then faced the judge. Mr. Manning, Miss Davis said gently, tell the court what you found. He swallowed. President Sterling misrepresented that clause to buyers, he said. She told homeowners the Southern Road was negotiated and just waiting for final approval. She withheld board votes. She authorized harassment and staged incident payments disguised as contractor fees. Miss Davis handed him a page. And the total of these unauthorized expenditures? He looked down. His voice was quiet, but the microphone carried it clear. $300,000. Gasps rolled around the room. The judge's chin lifted a fraction. The courthouse version of kicking the door in. And when you questioned President Sterling? Miss Davis asked. Tyler's voice firmed. She told me she'd pin it on me. Said I'd be the fall guy. Said, the treasurer always goes down first. Karen lurched to her feet. That's a lie he's twisting. The gavel hit with so hard half the room jumped. Sit down. Karen sat like her legs stopped working. Miss Davis finished clean. Your Honor, this petition isn't about emergency access. It's about control, retaliation, fabricated authority, and financial misconduct. The judge didn't take long. The HOA's petition is denied with prejudice, she said. Furthermore, based on the evidence of document tampering, staged incidents, and the alleged misappropriation of approximately $300,000 in association funds, This court is referring the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal review. Karen looked like someone had pulled her plug. Her attorney stared at the floor. The gallery buzzed. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just exhaled. A slow breath I'd been holding for months. The war wasn't over, but the field had changed. Karen wasn't the hunter anymore. She was the quarry. 2 days after the hearing, the air around my place felt different. Not peaceful exactly, just empty of schemes. My phone buzzed early. Text from Tyler. County auditors are here. They're asking questions. Karen didn't show. I stared at it for a long second. Something in my chest nodded a notch. By midday, a local reporter called. We've confirmed a financial review is open on Riverbend HOA, she said. Care to comment? No, I replied. But I'll listen. She laughed. It's messy. Really messy. Messy didn't cover it. By afternoon, folks were saying the auditor had already found irregularities that matched what was on that USB Tyler gave me. Consultant fees, security operations, resolution strategy, payments to contractors nobody could find, line items named community response and unplanned compliance measures. Total, just over $307,400. Roughly half had no board approval at all. The rest hid under fake maintenance categories. That isn't sloppy bookkeeping. That's fraud. The board called an emergency meeting that night in their stucco gilt box of a clubhouse. Chairs filled, people standing in the hallway. I stayed home, sat on my porch with a drink, and let the wind carry over fragments of raised voices. You lied to all of us. Where's the money, Karen? The judge said criminal referral. We trusted you. Trust's like a fence post. Once it snaps, you don't glue it back. You replace it. Word was, the meeting ended with a motion to suspend Karen as president while they sorted the mess. She refused. People like Karen don't step down. They wait to be pulled. The next morning the county released a statement about potential criminal violations under financial fraud statutes. After that, the knocks started. Not angry ones. Apologetic ones. Residents at my gate with pies, handshakes, awkward looks. Sorry we believed the flyers. Sorry we joined the protest. Sorry we didn't ask questions sooner. I accepted every one. Not because I needed them, but because apologies are cheap and grudges are heavy. 3 days later, the real show rolled in. I was welding a brace on the eastern fence when the sirens came. Not a full wail, just that steady approach that says paperwork is involved. I straightened and shaded my eyes. One sheriff's SUV turned into Clearwater Ridge. Then another. Then a county investigator's sedan. They drove right past the clubhouse, headed for Karen Sterling's house. Her big, perfect, HOA-approved palace. Manicured shrubs. Custom glass front door with a pelican etched in it for reasons only she knew. Residents peered from curtains. Some stepped onto porches with their phones up. This wasn't hostile. Just that small-town instinct that kicks in when something is happening. Karen came out in a white blouse and a tight smile that didn't fit her face. She started in with words like misunderstanding, procedural errors, politically motivated audits. The officers didn't debate her. They read the charges instead. Fraud, conspiracy to commit trespass, misappropriation of community funds, authorization of staged incidents, document tampering. When the cuffs went on, she sucked in air like someone had punched her. Not angry, not confused, just stunned that reality had arrived with badges. As they walked her toward the SUV, a breeze rattled the decorative entrance sign behind her. Riverbend Estates, Community of Trust. Someone nearby caught the angle on their phone. Well, that didn't age well, another neighbor muttered. Karen ducked her head, but the cameras didn't care. They recorded the walk of shame, the last look she gave that sign she once posed under, and the cold fact that the people she'd claimed to protect were watching her leave in handcuffs. 2 weeks later, the state dissolved the HOA. License revoked. Operations frozen. A temporary overseer appointed to sort out the financial wreckage. Someone floated Tyler's name for a new board. He turned it down. I didn't blame him. He stopped by one evening, hands in his pockets, eyes tired but lighter. "I never wanted it to go this far," he said. "I know," I replied. "You hate us?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, but I'm keeping my gate closed." He smiled, small but real. "Fair enough. Life doesn't snap back after a fight like that. It settles. Dust after a stampede." But the quiet came home again. Not the nervous quiet from before. Just the normal sounds. Dogs barking at nothing, wind through the cedars, the ring of tools from the workshop. One afternoon I poured fresh concrete along my eastern fence and sank heavy steel bollards into it, thick enough to stop a careless driver or a determined idiot. I mounted solar lights, then hung a hand-painted sign. "No trespassing private land, HOA is not the law." A local metal shop had made me a second sign. Polished edges, gold trim, fancier than I like. I hung it anyway. Neighbors still come by. The ones who apologized. The ones who learned something. I don't carry grudges. But the gate stays closed. There's a particular quiet that follows a long fight. Not the sharp stillness before a storm. Not the hollow one when trouble's hiding. This is the quiet of a long exhale. Of land unclenching. Weeks turned into months after Karen's arrest. Time sanded the edges off the anger, left the lessons. I kept doing what I've always done. Fixing what broke, mending what tore, working the place the way Earl taught me. Most mornings I walked the fence with a mug of coffee, steam curling in the cool air. The dogs trotted beside me, tails swaying like slow clocks. Sometimes I'd stop at the eastern line, right where the excavator once crawled up thinking it had a right to be there. Where strangers once spray-painted crosses on my posts. Now the fence was solid, reinforced. Solar lights clicked off when the sun rose. Bollards cast long shadows across the gravel. They weren't pretty, but they were honest. In a world full of pretense, honest things have a beauty of their own. The mailbox held fewer glossy newsletters and more handwritten notes. "Thanks for standing your ground. Saw your story on the news. Wish more folks would do what you did. Sorry we judged you without facts." I kept them in a drawer. Not as trophies. As reminders. People screw up. Communities screw up bigger. Sometimes, if you give them the truth plain and steady, they circle back. Every so often I'd see a Clearwater Ridge resident walking a dog along the county road. Some waved. Some didn't. One older gentleman in suspenders and a hat stopped by the fence one morning. "I misjudged you," he said. "No harm done," I replied. He nodded at the gate, then the open land behind me. "Think things you'll be better now without the HOA?" I shrugged. "People will either learn from it or they won't." He chuckled, nodded again, and walked on. In the evenings I'd sit on the porch and watch the sun drip behind the horizon in orange and purple. Distant highway hum. Coyotes way out in the brush. Old wind chimes my grandfather made from tractor parts rattling in the breeze. I thought about him a lot. About what he'd have said. Probably something simple like a boundary only means something if you're willing to defend it. Landmen aren't complicated. We don't need speeches to tell right from wrong. A line is a line. A lie is a lie. A gate is a gate. There were days after the court dust settled when I wondered if it could have gone differently. If I should have taken their easement check. Ignored the trespasses and theatrics. Let the road be carved up in the name of community. Then I'd walk that quarter-mile stretch of gravel my grandfather carved in '67. The same road they wanted to fold into their map like it had always belonged to them. And I'd remember why I stood firm. Not from spite or pride. From truth. This land was handed down. Not handed over. Once you give away something you didn't earn, you'll never truly get it back. Late one afternoon, Tyler pulled in again. No ledger, no folders. Just a man leaning against his truck. "You know what's strange?" he said. "The HOA treated you like the enemy. But you might have saved this whole place." "How's that?" I asked. "If Karen had kept going," he said, "we'd be bankrupt, or in court, or worse. Sometimes the one holding the line is the only thing keeping everyone else from going over the edge." I didn't answer. Didn't have to. He clapped my shoulder once and drove off. A man lucky to have a future that didn't involve bars and concrete. That night, As I walked down to lock the gate, the breeze moved through the grass, carrying cedar and warm soil. The new sign caught the porch light, gold trim winking like quiet revenge. I put my hand on the cool metal, not in triumph, in closure. Before heading back to the house, I spoke into the dark. Not loud, not for anyone but the land. My land, my rules. The wind didn't answer, didn't need to. Some things, once said out loud, are settled for good.